Perfect. All right, if you're joining for the meetup for the first time, I'm sure you are going to have a lot of fun. We got some wonderful talks from the team and the community. We regularly host these meetups to bring the community together, share updates, learn, and have fun. If you or anyone you know would like to speak at our meetups, feel free to reach out to me. I am Harshil Agrawal, your host for this meetup. Now, for every meetup starts with a nice ice-breaking question, just to know a bit about you all. So this ice-breaking question is around the theme of the holidays that are coming along. I would like to know which is your favorite sweets. Well, if you don't like sweets, tell us which is your favorite dish. Wow, a lot of good ideas over here. A lot of nice names. So, Lindt chocolate, I got this for my cousins, and they really loved it. I can definitely say that those are the best chocolates that I ever had. Big fan of Bounty. There's a French dessert as well. That's wonderful, and coconut candy. Wow. All right. You folks are kind of making me a bit nervous because my idea was to pick out a few of this and try to cook them on my own. With this list, I don't know how many I would be able to do, but I'll surely keep you updated on my Twitter. All right. So let's move forward and let's take a quick look at some housekeeping rules. Again, this meetup is recorded, so if you are not comfortable, feel free to turn off your webcam. Ask your questions in the chat. I have the chat window open with me. I am going to continuously collect your questions and ask to the speakers. And be respectful and mindful. Let's taking a quick look at the agenda. We'll start with the product updates from the one and only Max. And we'll move on to the talk by Stephan. And if you are interested to know more about the licensing and partnering with n8n, this talk is for you. We'll then have a short Q&A where you can ask your questions to Max and Stephan. So again, don't forget to put your questions in the chat. And then after the Q&A, Maxim will talk about how to integrate your daily tools and apps. And we'll end the series of talks with a talk from Jason, titled Putting the Brakes on Swivel Chair. Now, I don't know if he created a workflow to stop the swivel chairs or not. We'll find out in this talk. So let's kick off the session with the most awaited product updates. Max, the head of design, will give you a teaser of what is coming next in n8n. Max, over to you.
Thanks, Harshil, for the warm introduction as always. And so good to see everyone a month later. As you can imagine, we've been busy, so I've got a lot of exciting updates for you. Show you some stuff that we put out recently and some stuff that we're working on. In terms of the first thing that I'd love to show you, you may have seen it already if you've updated your version of n8n recently, but we have deployed some exciting improvements to the workflow canvas. So if you've noticed a big change in the workflow canvas, that's what I'm talking about. I'll show it in a minute here. And I think whenever we're talking about new features, I always like to explain the why, because we do a lot of thinking and listening to your needs when we build a feature. And so the reason we felt we needed to sort of refactor and improve the experience was we wanted to clarify what's happening in a workflow. Both for simple workflows, which sort of affects a lot of newcomers when they're trying out n8n, but also for complex workflows. So we see a lot of you, it's amazing when we see it, creating these 10, 20, 30, 40 node workflows. I think at times those could get a little busy and it might not be clear what's happening. So we focused on improving the node states, making sure that everything that we're doing is conveying some sort of information or helping you in some sort of way. And so really sort of channeling function and form over artifice. And so we also did a few things to make the canvas a bit more intuitive for newcomers that shouldn't conflict with any sort of established patterns for current power users. And we also added some faster patterns for things like injecting nodes in existing flows or when you delete a node that is connected between two, those auto connect. Sort of studied the sorts of things that power users are most likely to do and try to just have some sort of faster patterns to do that. Because the feedback we always get is that, in n8n, you can create like this idea pace. And so that's something we want to continue channeling with all of our features. And this is just the first phase for our canvas improvements. So what you've seen already is the majority of it. I'm going to add a little bit more, but we do have a much longer roadmap in mind for how we're going to continue improving canvas. But as good as talking is, I'm guessing you'd rather see it in action. So I'll share my screen now here. And so if you can see an empty workflow canvas, I'm sharing the right screen. If not, Asha, let me know. But basically what you'll notice, there is some sort of visual design that we've changed. You'll notice right away, nodes no longer have colorful borders. And so there was a bit of a debate about that. For us, we really wanted to make sure that workflows, or each node is giving you some sort of information. So now when we execute a workflow, we can see that it was successfully executed. So we figured that conveying something through that color would make it more helpful. And there's also an error statement, something goes wrong. What you notice also here is we see the items of data coming out of a connector. And if I reset this, we now have this sort of plus here, which we again can use to drag. We can of course still use the existing one here, but we can also click to add a node. So in this case, if I add a set node, for example, we can now also inject nodes in between. And so if I delete the set node here, you can see that that's auto connected. So everything you're seeing here is already out, except for this plus, which should be coming out very soon. Now, if I open up an existing workflow, kind of see some of this in action. So here we're fetching a bunch of items. We're doing an if check. So some items might route to the top, some to the bottom here. If I execute this now, we can see that very clearly, right? So from the start node, one item's coming in. This customer data store node is doing a get all operation, so it lists 5 entries. We can now see a lot more clearly that 2 of those are routing up to the true branch, 3 through the false. And again, we could insert more nodes if we needed to here, right? And if we delete them, that sort of auto connects again. So small improvements that we hope help our power users and definitely help also with adoption of n8n, because the bigger our community gets, right, the more people we're going to get helping contributing nodes, workflows, all that sort of thing. So I think it's a win-win for everyone, even when we make features that do help newer users, because then we kind of fuel the community. This feature obviously touches a lot of like the core experience of n8n. It's not some sort of settings page or whatnot. So as always, we're always keen to hear feedback. And if there's anything that you'd like to see sort of continue to improve, again, we have a roadmap here. So it's good to know that, because that could match up with what we're doing and help prioritizing what we do next when it comes to the canvas. So that's the demo portion of this. Other than that, I do have a few brief updates on some things that are in progress that I can talk about now. So the big one that I'm guessing a lot of you are waiting for an update for is user management. So it's a big feature. It's something we've been working on for a while. And the elephant in the room is it's not out yet, right? So rest assured, heavy hitters on our engineering team are on the case. We've got some very talented folks working on some really non-trivial cases that have come up when thinking about realizing user management where it actually works. We don't just want to tick boxes. We want to ship a V1 that has a great foundation and then a plan for how we're going to build that out. It's coming along nicely. I would love to give you an estimate. So far, if I'm being candid, we haven't been so great at estimating this type of a feature, so we don't want to break any more promises, but rest assured it is a top priority. If you do want to beta test it, this is obviously sort of a non-trivial feature. We're going to be doing more testing than some of these smaller features. Do reach out to me. You can reach me at Twitter. It's at Tkacz, MaxTkacz. I'm also in the community forums as MaxT. There's a few different ways to reach out to me, but I'd love to put you on the list if you do want to help out in testing that out. One of the other sort of big features that we're working on right now is a workflow repository or workflow templates. So one thing we've heard repeatedly is, I don't know if I'm doing this right, when they're talking about how they're implementing a workflow, or I want inspiration on what I could automate. And we see workflow templates as a solution for both of these things. So currently you can access workflows on n8n.io. What we're going to be doing with this feature is bringing it into the app and then doing some operational things to sort of improve the quality of those workflows and basically make it more useful for you to sort of help yourself and also ultimately contribute workflows that can help others. So the design's almost finished of this. It will be getting rolled out into n8n. Once design is finished, of course, we'll go to implementation. And again, to reiterate, we're not just popping the n8n.io Explorer view into n8n. We are cleaning up low quality workflows as part of this. We're going to add workflow collections. You can start seeing like use cases of multiple workflows together. We're going to add some metrics. Right now, it's not really easy to see which workflows are popular. And then we're going to be working with some Power community members to solicit high quality workflows, because we could always use more. There's all these different apps and whatnot that you're using, so to have good coverage of inspiration and best practices for all that kind of stuff. And then lastly, something that's in the works right now, I'd say it's in early stages. I don't have an ETA on it, but I think very exciting news is we're starting to lay the groundwork for a much easier way to write nodes with it basically represented all in JSON. So this should make it much easier to do things like importing from Swagger API and using things like node building UI, because ultimately it's generating JSON. You'll still need to know what you're doing, essentially, but it should massively lower the friction of building a new node. So as part of this, up until now, our focus has been, on the core team on building new nodes. We're going to soon rebalance that focus to overhauling these sort of existing nodes that are very popular that people use. So our hope here is by providing basically, these fishing rods for people to build their own nodes, and by making that a lot easier, that we can ourselves do this sort of more complicated work on improving these very popular nodes that are maybe and needs a lot more thinking, but then empower the community to be able to get coverage of all those apps and APIs out there by making it a lot easier to make nodes. So as always, this is just a sneak peek of what we're working on. It's definitely not every ticket on the board. There's a lot more than this. And finally, as always, I do want to thank everyone on the team and our community. Everything you've seen here, everything we're working on, it is a team effort, both our core team and you amazing community members. So I appreciate all of your help, feedback, and insights in making it as great as it can be. Cheers.
Thanks, Max. You were amazing as always, and can't wait to see those new features coming out soon. Oftentimes, we get a lot of questions on n8n Embed and how the licensing works. So Stephan, our head of revenue, wants to help you with that. Heading over to Stephan to learn how to build software faster with n8n Embed. Take it away, Stephan.
Thank you, Harshal. Appreciate that intro. For those of you who don't know me, I'll introduce myself real quick. Stephan Aina, head of revenue. I've been with n8n a few months now, and I'm excited to meet you all in person someday, but for now we'll do this remote. Let's jump right in. So, let me move this. So we see a problem, and we often hear this, and it's that native integrations and custom workflows are looking to become more powerful as the proliferation of a SaaS is becoming more relevant. And they're looking to add new features to their products. And of course, time and resources are always constraining factors here. So in the last 3 months, I've had about 100+ conversations with different folks from around the globe, including C-levels, technical architects, developers, etc. You can see some of their feedback here, but a lot of them are trying to decide whether they need to build or buy a lot of this functionality that they're looking for in their solution. They're having a hard time maintaining new integrations that they've built, or others are trying to keep competitors out of their space or looking to add new features as part of their core product and rather focus on the core development of their products rather than maintaining integrations that they simply need to pull and push data, for example. And others are looking to automate certain parts of their software product that have repetitive tasks have come up quite frequently. And you can see not only are they different roles that we are speaking with here, but also they come from a lot of different industry verticals. So it could be security software, e-commerce platforms, healthcare. And again, like I mentioned before, this is quite a global effort. So we're talking to folks from South America to obviously Europe and the US as well, but also have a lot of interest from South Africa and the Far East. And if we move on to the next slide, we see here that the solution to this is introducing software to accelerate the product development and reduce the maintenance effort. And here, what they're looking for is, of course, speed, adoption, flexibility, and quality. And they want to have the ability to communicate some of this to non-technical folks. So they're looking for a low-code approach, maintaining product stickiness with native integrations, flexible hosting options, the availability to have access to the source code, and of course, maintaining the quality for both their internal workforce and their end users. Here, and embed some of the technical features that they take advantage of are, of course, our ability to host both on-prem and on the cloud. We have customers who need to keep specific parts of their user base completely off the internet, for example. We have someone who has it out at an island somewhere, and it's completely disconnected from any other data sources. So that's a great option for them. We have others who are moving into the cloud, even in the financial services space. And here they're able to control their own data and maintain the security. As many of you know, we've been working very hard on our native integrations. We call them nodes. We have weekly releases, and we're well over 350 nodes at the moment. And of course, this gives immediate access to our Embed customers to a library of API connectors that we've built and maintained, and that reduces the development effort. We also have a large partner base that we work with that we're able to create nodes on their side that are specific to our customers' business. And we provide out-of-the-box backend logic so that they can rapidly create automations such as email alerts, sending data, writing data. This overall reduces the amount of code that they need to maintain within their own solution. And automation capabilities. So they're looking for a workflow automation engine to accelerate their time to market in order for them to focus on, again, their core solution, whether that be enabling dashboards for their customers, building different tools, or looking to solve the specific user problems that they see in their market. Some additional advantages that n8n Embed customers get are the ability to inspect the code for vulnerabilities and investigate bugs without waiting for our support. The low barrier to entry. We have a very stable commercial model where we have a revenue share as a standard. So there's no minimum annual fee, and our customers get to control the cost of their end users. So as their product improves over the time that they've integrated n8n and additional functionalities, they can then pass this cost off to their customers as they see that they're driving more value without worrying that the vendor may increase costs along the way. Furthermore, I've mentioned this before, we have a global network partner list of n8n experts. So they help our customers speed up their development and ramp up their internal teams when it comes to workflow capabilities in terms of building custom workflows for their users or developing nodes that are specific to their business. We're backed by world-class VC and angel investors, so we're financially stable. In terms of our long-term goals, it's to increase adoption globally of n8n, but also to build a strong revenue driving part of the business. And this is what we're planning to do with n8n Embed. So our customers on the Embed side enjoy open-ended relationships with us on the software side of things. The commercial agreement has no term to it, meaning that they have the overall confidence that they've chosen a vendor that they can grow with over the next 5 to 10 years. Of course, most of you know this, we're backed by a strong community. So not only is it the internal teams that are pushing the product forward, but when our customers choose to have new integrations be part of the core product by submitting pull requests, they take advantage of the community, of course, building and giving feedback on those integrations. And this again improves the overall quality and experience of their end users. We recently reached 19,000 stars on GitHub, which is a major achievement. And again, this speaks to the viability and the confidence that the embed side of the business needs to have in the overall vendor that our customers choose. One final thought, the new joint venture that we seek is by having an improved OEM technology embedded in our customers' applications. This, of course, provides increased value to their end customers. We enjoy a new revenue stream, and the licensee, our embed customers, reap the benefits of having specialized experts as part of their vendor network. The end customer is the beneficiary of a new and improved solution, and everybody wins. So I invite everyone who is interested in becoming an embed prospect to download the GitHub code directly from GitHub and access some of these resources here. Once you started to build and integrate and you're interested in finding more about the specific licensing terms and how we become partners, you can simply email us at license@n8n.io, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you and answer any questions that you have, and also perhaps put you in touch with a few of our customers that have so far enjoyed a special relationship with us. Thanks to everyone for your time, and happy to take questions.
Thank you, Stephan. Let me quickly share my screen. And here we go. I'm sure this is gonna be helpful to everyone. And now it's time for the Q&A. So folks, if you have any questions, just post it in the chat and I'll ask your questions to Stephan and Max. Gathering some questions from the previous talk is, Max, we have a really good question is, do we have any option to auto-organize the nodes in a proper order?
So I read that comment. To reframe what I'm understanding by that is your nodes might be maybe not perfectly aligned, that you can sort of click a button in the cleanup mode. So I would say that's definitely something we've discussed. Being candid, it's not something that I've seen on an like immediate roadmap if we're talking the next month or two sort of thing, because there's user management, there's a few other things that we think really helps everyone. What I can say is that the Canvas improvements update, what we did do previously, the minimal snap that you can move a node was 10 pixels. We now have increased that to 20 pixels. So we're hoping that by increasing that, it is a bit easier to kind of snap your nodes in a row because you don't have to go sort of align them and whatnot. Now, again, that's not an auto cleanup feature. And I do understand for like complicated flows, especially for some of us who like to have things neat and whatnot. So I would say, please do add that as a community request on the forums, do the old upvote thing. If that bubbles up to the top, we will reprioritize that. But right now it's not in the sort of immediate next things that we're working on.
Wonderful. And if I'm not wrong, there is already a feature request on the community forum. So just go ahead and give an upvote to that.
Perfect.
And then you showed that you were running n8n on Heroku. So we have a question on that. Using n8n on Heroku, is it a good idea? Will it work for a web app, let's say?
So it sort of really depends, right, with these kinds of questions. We use Heroku from time to time when we're like doing testing, when we spin something up. I think it's a very great way to use n8n when you need something that's ephemeral. When it comes to something permanent, I think it's like anything. Are you running a few workflows for yourself personally? Are they mission critical? These are the sorts of considerations I think like on any infrastructure. So what I would say though is I have seen people running workflows on maybe larger Heroku instances, more of a production instance, and it works fine. The other thing that would come to mind is, are you using the edit image node? Very different system requirements or resources that it would use versus processing CSVs. So like anything, the answer is probably yes. If it's very mission critical, you should probably do a little bit more thinking, but then still likely yes, just depends on which resources you're provisioning and whatnot.
Perfect. Thank you for answering that. Stephan, I've got a question for you. How does multi-threading work and multi-tenants with Embed?
Good question. So currently we don't have multi-tenancy as part of the feature out of the box. We are looking to build this for some time in 2022. But I think as Max mentioned earlier in the conversation, we are launching user management relatively soon. And there in the embed scenario as well, you'll be able to have one instance for various users. So they can log in, and you can also have an admin account that you can, of course, administer in the back end. So that gets us part of the way to multi-tenancy. But for now, you'd have to set up individual instances for each customer domain.
Just to go off of that, if that is something that you're looking to do, n8n Cloud is single tenancy, so we do have like a validated production business use case where we're eating our own dog food and doing that. And then with user management, Stephan's absolutely right. The V1, it is planned to have basically through some environment variables, the ability to deactivate certain things to sort of have users be in their own little silo and bucket. And then sort of more features around user management, multi-tenancy, all that will be part of the user management roadmap once we release the V1. We're just kind of trying to decouple all that other complexities so we can get that V1 out there, obviously, and then iterate on it, get your feedback and whatnot. So that's why we're sort of going about it this way.
Wonderful. And Max, can you just give a quick overview of what you talked about, the templates or the workflows repository?
Just to rehash?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So TLDR is people are asking, how do I build good workflows? People are asking, what should I build? I've done some basic stuff. I want more inspiration. We see workflow templates as a solution to that. We want to bring a workflow template explorer into the n8n app to really lower the friction to doing that. So that's what we've sort of designed out and we'll be implementing. So you'll be able to access that from within n8n. And then at the same time, that's on the sort of the demand side. There's also the supply side about having high quality workflows. So we're doing a bunch of sort of initiatives internally to make sure that we have a bunch of high quality workflows. So cleaning up our current workflow repo that's available on n8n.io for filtering out some of the lower quality workflows, adding better guidance on what is a good workflow. And one thing that I think I may have forgotten to mention, we are considering moving workflow comments as a feature a bit higher up our roadmap to give everyone the tools to be able to sort of ship better annotated workflows and whatnot. So that'd be useful for templates, also anyone working in a team or trying to annotate their flows. Hope that sort of sums up nicely what we want to do.
Perfect. And one last question before we move on to the next talk is there any way to favorite nodes?
Sure. So something like pinning a node or favoriting, I'm assuming you mean like in the context of your nodes panel, so they kind of show at the top. That's not something we have right now. It's something that when we, some months ago, we sort of refactored the nodes panel and that was concepted out. So something we do very often, we design like this is the high fidelity version, this is what we're going to build, this is perhaps that next step, and we do some sort of lower fidelity concepting out, so we're not designing ourselves into a corner. So that has been thought about. I think on that one, it's really going to be a case of sort of getting this user management out the door and a few of these other bigger pieces, and then focusing on some of these things. One thing I can say though is that it's very excited to say like our team is growing. We have more engineers, more product folks are joining. So I'm really excited for 2022. We're basically just going to have a whole lot more bandwidth to keep making it awesome.
That's awesome. Folks, I am going to ask you to ask your questions, so keep them coming in. We'll take it in the next segment of the Q&A, but let's move forward. So Maxim is an engineer working for Vibe. His role is to bring technical touch to the business operations of company, creating processes, implementing automations, connecting tools, creating a data architecture, and facilitating the day-to-day operations for the employees. Maxim also partnered with ML School to teach other people how to create automation workflows with n8n. Thanks for joining in, Maxim. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm super glad to be able to give you a little talk during this community meetup. So I'm just going to share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Yep, perfect.
Yep.
So today I'm going to talk to you a bit about how we used n8n to connect our apps, our product, to our everyday tools. So just to give you a quick idea of what we do at Vibe. So Vibe is the web technology of visual support and knowledge management. Basically, we integrate video calls into everyday tools, IBM Maximo, Salesforce, Zendesk, Microsoft Dynamics, etc., etc. What's the idea? Why do we do this? Because by replacing, radio and phone calls by video, we increase first call resolution rates, increase net promoter score, and decrease machine downtime, displacements, and CO2 emissions. So what was the challenge? So each one of our clients has their own Docker container on which they have their own web, which means that for each Docker container, we have a different database, and it's very complicated for us to access all of our databases without having to run through different logins and authentication. And honestly, when I was talking with the tech team, they weren't really glad with me authenticating to Vibe through cloud platforms that we don't host ourselves. So what was the objective? The objective, as I was saying earlier, was to connect so Vibe to, first of all, a Google BigQuery database on which we can plug, for example, a Google Data Studio, better understand our user, like user actions, user interactions, be able to figure out, when a customer is likely to churn, how many calls, how many tickets, etc. And also to have, a duplicate of all the information that was in Vibe in our HubSpot, so our CRM, most notably user lists, bad feedbacks for customer success, and tracking user onboarding. So what was the solution that we decided to go with? It was webhooks. So basically, every time that a notable event happens in Vibe, a webhook is sent to n8n. n8n will, of course, work with this data and send it to BigQuery, and depending on different cases, to HubSpot. So let me just show you what it looks like. So this is a pretty big one, so don't get scared. Quite a few nodes. Yeah, I can see Max cheering. Yeah, it's pretty huge. It's pretty huge. But basically, we have one single point where all of our webhooks are sent. So this webhook node. And then, of course, depending on the bajillion different options that we have, whether it's a user webhook, a ticket webhook, a session webhook, creation of a call center, or creation of an expertise, we're going to format the data and send it all to BigQuery. And then we use the execute workflow here to do all of the extra actions. So for example, this is our bad feedback one. Here we have our user lists and our user onboardings. This is also for bad feedbacks. If you guys want, I can go a bit more in detail about how these work. And then we also report everything to Slack just to make sure that we see everything that goes through and don't have any specific errors. So this was quite a big project, and it was actually co-developed with our tech team, because I work on the more of the business operations side and don't really have like my hands in the product. And this was one of the things that was a bit more difficult when developing this workflow compared to many others, because having to constantly exchange with the tech team made it a bit more heavy and difficult to implement. And we were a little bit less agile because I wasn't the only one working on the workflow. And every time there was something that was wrong with the webhooks or that some were missing, we always had to ask for specific changes. Some of the really cool points that that this solution entailed were, well, first of all, we host n8n on our own servers, so we're not limited by number of workflow executions. So an execution of the workflow every time an action happens wasn't really a problem for us. We don't use n8n.cloud. And we also didn't have to authenticate to Vibe on a server that was not under our control. And it was also a real-time integration, which means that because of this, we actually can keep, if I can show you really quickly, we actually keep user lists in HubSpot. So for each one of our clients, we have a user list. So here's a user list, here's a user list, and they're updated in real time. And this means that our customer success managers can easily see from HubSpot who our different clients are, what different accounts have been created, how many calls have been going on. We constantly update all of our contacts in HubSpot with information from our product. And this also allowed, as I was explaining earlier, to duplicate all of our data into Google BigQuery. And then we use this to create really complicated dashboards that we give access to the whole team so that they can analyze what's going on with our different clients. I have two more minutes. So this is what I wanted to talk about mainly today, but I actually did something yesterday that I thought was really cool and I wanted to share with you. So in Google Sheets, there's a function called import data. And basically import data mimics what a webhook, mimics a get webhook call. So what I did was I created a workflow that takes a user agent, calls UserStack's API, and parses the data that was from the user agent. And so the workflow looks something like this. So basically, here's webhook. We set the query parameter, call the API, set the device, browser, etc., and use the respond to webhook node to actually import the data back into Google Sheets. So this is actually a really cool way that you can integrate n8n to Google Sheets instantaneously without having to set up complicated scripts or something like that. Basically, all you have to do is set up the webhook node and then use a string formula, something like this, and you can send data to n8n. And with the respond to webhook node, you can actually send it back to Google Sheets. So I thought that was pretty cool, and I wanted to share with you guys today. I think it has many different use cases, so I'd be happy to learn more. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, I'd be glad to answer them. And if not, thanks for listening, and again, happy to be here.
Well, that was a great talk. Thank you for sharing your experience. And the Google Sheet trick was pretty amazing. I am going to definitely try it out.
I thought you would like it.
Yeah.
I thought you'd like it.
We'll come back to the questions after Jason's talk. So stick around. I will come back to you soon. So let's move forward with the last talk. So Jason, aka Teflon Dude, is joining us from Canada. Will demonstrate how to use n8n to increase the efficiency and accuracy of data ingestion and how to distribute data automatically among the systems. Take it away, Jason.
Thanks, Arshil. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us again today. So I guess maybe to start the whole conversation off, I'm going to maybe explain a little bit by what I mean about swivel chair. So this is a term, I don't know if it's North American specific or even just specific to my house, but there's been some confusion around that. So when I'm talking about swivel chair, I'm typically talking about when you are jumping from application to application to kind of get a process done. So you may have one application and you're working over here on this screen, and then you got to copy some information, copy that over into another screen, paste that into there, then you get some information from there and put it into another one. And it's just this long, boring, arduous process. And using n8n is a fantastic way to eliminate some of that swivel chair. So what I've done is I've actually created on purpose a relatively common type of a personal flow that you would have to follow in order to get a task done. And I've recorded doing that whole task because it actually takes much longer than I would want to force you guys to sit through. And so I'll kind of run you through the task and the video. And then I'll show you how I've automated all of those tasks using n8n with a workflow. and taken that task from the manual task that it was to a simple entry of information into an n8n system. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, if I can even remember how to share my screen. Too many screens here. There we go. So I'm assuming everybody can see my screen now. So this here is kind of the overview of the workflow. So what we have is an individual, you receive a client's name. You have to go look up the client's files. So you have to find it amongst a bunch of files. Figure out what city they are located in based on that file name. Then you need to take that city name and look up an agent in an Excel spreadsheet, so that you can take that agent information, find their agent number, do a request, an appointment request for that agent so they can set up a meeting. You need to record the appointment in the database, and then you have to email out the client. So I'm just going to kind of walk through very quickly here. Like I said, I've recorded it, and you can see at the bottom, here's our timer showing how long it takes. And so we're already into the first step of the process. And they've put the person's name in. And now we've got to find it in this whole list of PDFs, which, as you can see, I've actually used a little trick where I can do a review of what's in the file, so I don't actually have to open up the file. But we're literally working through like 100 different files to find the right person. So we've had to actually go and see if we can get that person. We'll speed this along a little bit. Oh, it looks like we actually found the person. There it is, Victor Heap. So now that we've found who that person is, I'm just going to jump ahead here. We got to get their city. So we're already almost a minute into this process that's manual. So we're going to copy that over, and we're going to jump into yet another system. And we've got to cross-reference their city. So now we've got the city. Now we've got to find out the agent reference number, which is stored in an Excel spreadsheet. So now we've got this Excel spreadsheet of all these rows. You got to filter through it, try and find the right city. And again, there's nothing here that isn't a process that somebody hasn't run into before. We've all done this type of stuff. So we're getting in further in here. So we're going to keep moving ahead. So there we go. We got the agent's reference number. Now we've submitted it to the web page, and we've got the reference number for the meeting set up. So now we can go, and let's keep moving ahead here, grab that reference number, and we can move on to the next step. Let me speed us along here. So now we've started entering this information into, we're using base row here, entering that information in to the base row session. That allows us to record that data. And we're just going to keep moving along. So now we've got the agent reference number, we've got the reference number for the meeting, and then we have to go back again and find the name of the person, Victor Heap. That's who we're setting this meeting up for, and we put that into the database. So there you go. So now we've got this running in the database. So we're already 2.5 minutes into this process. Next, we've got to set up the email. So you got to go in, you got to write the email, you got to find their email address. So here it is again, jumping back and forth. Once we find their email address, we can put it in there. We can throw in the subject name, we type it in. And I've even made this faster. I've already tried to optimize it a little bit by having a template built out. So here's the template that we're going to use. And we're going to take that template, we'll copy it, and tweak it a little bit, paste it in, and then we've got to find all the different variables. So we've got client there, agent phone number, so on. So like we're almost 5 minutes into this process. As you can see, it's boring watching it and fast forward, let alone trying to do it manually. So we get that all done, we grab all the right information again, paste it all in, and we'll speed us up here a bit. And there we get to the final email, which gets sent off, and then from there we're done. So we go back, and so we're at about just over 7 minutes here for this entire process. So that's not an insignificant amount of time. So what I did is I jumped and I built a workflow. So every single one of the things that you saw within that presentation is represented here in this workflow. So for example, where we have to look things up in the file folders, well, that's represented here. by this piece of the workflow. We have to go look into the the Excel spreadsheet. That's all in here. This piece here will actually take the information and submit it automatically and grab the reference number from the web page, update the base row, create the email, and send it out. And if we go back to our video, and because this one is so short, we can almost do this in real time. We're going to grab the person's name again that we have to do this for, paste it into the web interface that I created. This is all in n8n. You hit submit. And so we're about 15, 16 seconds in. So there's a little bit of work that's happening in the background. It takes a little bit for it to process. And we're done, 20 seconds. So what was a 7-minute process now got converted down into about 20 seconds of effort. And there you go, there's the proof that the stuff actually all went out. So this is something that I want you to start thinking about. And I'm going to stop sharing here. I want you to start thinking about for when you're working with your own business, working with your employer, if you do consulting, this is something to start focusing on. So anytime you get these types of processes that are relatively drawn out, they're all fairly manual, take a look and see, are there ways that you can put n8n in to replace the whole process, or maybe even replace a part of it? And this would make people's jobs so much easier. So now we've got a process that was taking 7 minutes. Well, if you have to do that 100 times a day, you go from 700 minutes a day down to about 30 minutes a day to do all of that work. And there's a significant time saving. Those are the types of things that people really like to see, and that employers will look at this and go, hey, that is the type of employee I want to keep on. So there's some real advantage to that. Anyway, if you have questions, more than happy to answer them.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason. This was really interesting. And every time I recognize that I am following some certain steps, that can be automated, I always try out to build a workflow. And this is what I love to see, and this is what I love to do. And I'm sure a lot of people also found this helpful. So let's move forward to the next Q&A. Now, the first question is for Maxim. Maxim, you showed us a wonderful workflow, that huge workflow, and Nathan wants to have a bit more detail into it. So it would be glad if you can share a bit more detail about what is going on in that.
Sure. You guys want me to share my screen?
Sure.
Let's go. Can everyone share my screen? See my screen?
Yep.
Sorry. So I think it could be smaller. And this is a point I actually wanted to talk about, and I completely forgot. If I were to start it again, first of all, I would factor all of these branches into execute workflows and specific workflows. Because, for example, when someone says, okay, this user was created at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, and I have to look through the logs and find like the specific second where the webhook was sent, it's a bit of a pain. And having, these execute workflows a bit like instead of every branch would have been so much clearer. So if I dive a bit more into detail, so this is webhook, all of our webhooks, whatever type of webhook it may be, user, a call center, and expertise, all of them are centralized here. First of all, we parse it and send it to Slack. We actually have an n8n channel where all of the webhooks that we receive are being sent to Slack. It actually makes it a bit easier than sometimes going through the logs. Then what we do is that we actually look at what kind of object it is, and depending on the object, it's going to go in its own branch. Depending, of course, on the branch, we're going to have different options. So let's say it's a user. So if it's a user, we're going to, so some of the function nodes here, some webhooks will be a sum of actions. So there might be a user created, a call center created, and an expertise created in the same like second. And so we batch these together and send them all at the same time. So these are going to separate the actions into different items, and then we pass the items through different branches depending on what type of item they are. So let's say it's a user, we're going to set the properties. We're going to be looking if it's a deletion, because if it's deletion, we're not really interested in all of their properties, and we just need to add a line into BigQuery saying, okay, this record was deleted. For those of you that aren't really used to working with data warehouses, the idea isn't to have like a number of lines that you keep updating. What we do is every time we have new information, we add a new line. And then when we want to query the database, we look for the most recent line for each ID. So that's how we get the most recent version of all of our user data. We format some times, set a timestamp, and then send it to BigQuery. Then we have these two workflows here. So 62 and 63. And these basically are going to be, so 62 is user lists. So the idea of this is, as I was showing earlier, to have HubSpot lists where we have all of our users. If there's a new user, so if there's a new subdomain that doesn't have a list, then, so I'll show you here. If the subdomain does not exist, then we create the list. If it does exist, then we add it to the list. If it's deletion, we remove it from the list and add it to the deleted list. I mean, we have a bunch of different cases that we have to manage. But yeah, it's actually not that complicated. It's many different branches, because we have to look every time if it's a deletion, if the list already exists, if the contact already exists. We create contacts and keep them updated. So for example, what we do is every time that we receive a webhook on a user, one of our keys is their average NPS. And so we have a property in HubSpot that is vibe NPS, and we keep that constantly updated. And this allows us most notably to have a user list of our top users sorted by NPS, which is really easy, really great for us to find our champions and ask for interviews or stuff like that. The other one, 63, is for new users. So if the users, we have a role-based management system. If the user is an expert, an admin, or a manager, then we create a HubSpot ticket in an onboarding pipeline that the CSMs are constantly working on, depending on the subdomain. So here it's a bit specific because we actually enrich the ticket with the user information. So we use a Google Sheet with very tight restrictions. For example, which CSM is attributed to which account. And then we use this information to attribute the tickets to the CSM. Yeah, that's a few examples. I can show you more if you want, but I don't know if that answers your question.
That was really good. Thank you for going into the details. Related to that, I think you might be able to answer this question. So we have a question, what would be the approach if you want to call one workflow from another workflow? And I know you have already shown that, but if you can just talk a bit more about it.
Sure. So when using n8n, we use the execute workflow, which basically is going to take the list of JSONs that is entering the node and send it to the next node from the start node. So most of the time, the start node has no output, just an empty list. But if you use the execute workflow node, then it's going to take all of the information from this branch and send it to this workflow. Your question, Harshit, if I can just have another minute, something really cool that we do too is in HubSpot, there's workflows. And so sometimes you're limited with what you can do in HubSpot. And so what we do is we have a pretty cool system where we send, so let me just see if I can put it up, workflows. So in the HubSpot workflow builder, you can actually send webhooks. And so what we do is we actually use a combination of sending webhooks and waiting until a property changes. And this way we can actually make HubSpot and n8n communicate. So for example, quick example. So here, the problem is I have to parse data and set it as user properties, and I can't do this in HubSpot. So what we do is we send all of the information to n8n, use a workflow to process it. And then as soon as one of the properties has been changed, so this is one of the values that this property can take, then the workflow will continue. And this is a way that we can actually upgrade the workflow builder in HubSpot using n8n, using this post and delay until event happens. So basically the workflow will pause here for about, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute, the time that the n8n workflow executes, and then it'll just keep on going as it was before. So that's two ways to integrate workflows.
Well, that's a really nice idea. You are basically extending the limits of HubSpot with n8n and then giving it back to HubSpot.
Exactly.
I love that.
Exactly.
All right, I have a couple of more questions, but to be respectful of everyone's time, I have a couple of updates that I want to share, and I'll be then, moving forward with the questions after that. We have been busy with not just improving the product, but also making the community experience amazing for you all. And today I want to share a few of those updates with you. So first of all, thank you to everyone who has been creating content around automation and n8n. Your work is helping the fellow community members with their automation journey. And to make your work discoverable, we have started curating the list of all these resources, be it articles, videos, hosting configurations, workflows, anything that you are creating that's going to help the community. I have already shared the link on the community forum, and I am going to create a new post on the community forum sharing all the updates about this. So please do check out the community forum if you are interested to learn more about that. Now, to continuously add new features and improve n8n, we need more folks. And we have opening for various roles across the team. So if you are interested, please do apply. Or if you know someone who would be a good fit, you can refer them. As a reward for your referral, we will give you 1,000 euros. You can find more information about this in our docs as well. So if you go to contributing to n8n, you will find more information around this too. And last but not the least, we want to hear more from you. So please do share your reviews on n8n on G2 website. This is going to not help us, just get your feedback, but it is going to also help n8n be more discoverable out there. So that's it for the community updates. And as mentioned again, I am going to share everything on the community forum with all the links so you can find the information. Now coming back to the Q&A, there were really good questions. Now, Jason, you already answered this, but just to make sure everyone get the answers for this, where does RPA begin and integration platform end?
So it's interesting. I actually run an RPA team with my full-time job, and it's funny how we've kind of discovered that RPA has been one of these tools that has been getting a lot of hype lately, but really I find that the majority of what I would normally do with RPA, I actually do with n8n. If I've got an API I can talk to, if I've got a database I can talk to, if I have ways to access the data, I just finished actually writing an article on doing data access. There really is no need to engage those more expensive and more complicated RPA tools. Really, I don't jump into the whole RPA side of things often until I get to, doing like screen scraping or having to control like a mouse or a keyboard where there's just really is no other way to gather the information. Other than that, I stick to n8n, and frankly, some of the clients that I'm working with are they're governmental clients, and I'm getting n8n potentially in those environments to help build out better tools for them. That RPA would A, be extremely costly to do, and B, the resources to manage and maintain it would be also very, very costly. So n8n is a really good alternative for that type of thing.
Wonderful. And while I have you here, Jason, a really important question is, how many of those wild search do you have?
So I believe as of last count, I think I have about a dozen of them. And I actually have some custom ones on the way for as I'm building out my brand on YouTube. So well, YouTube and Twitter. So kind of keep your eyes open there. Some people may find an extra present under the Christmas tree.
That's wonderful. Maxim, I have a question for you is how much time did it take for you to build and test those workflows?
I mean, it's a bit of a tough one because it was, co-developed. We started with a few webhooks. At first, it was only users, sessions, and tickets. And then we started, building out more and more. At first, what we would do is so I wrote a Python script that locally connected to all of our databases and would call our API, get all of our call centers, expertises, etc., everything that we didn't have webhooks for. And slowly but surely, we started moving away from this weekly update that I would do manually. That would take like an hour. I mean, an hour of runtime. It was just starting a script, so it was pretty fast. So I think we built out the whole lot over the course of 2 months, 2.5 months. It was a few months ago. I mean, we keep finding bugs, of course. Just yesterday, I found out that when a user was created specifically from a specific page, then the webhook wasn't being sent, and so we were missing data, and then I had to request a tech team. It was a pain in the buttocks. But the actual implementation, honestly, I would say a few hours. Like the n8n part, it's not that complicated. It's just laying out the. I like to work on paper. First before drawing workflows. And so this was actually built with one of my interns. And so we sat with a huge piece of paper and drew out all of the different possibilities. And then just, implemented it. It was pretty, none of the JavaScript is that complicated. Most of the nodes are 15 seconds to configure. I mean, if you were to delete the workflow and say, okay, start again, it would probably take me 2 hours, 2.5, I would say. But it's backed up, so don't even try deleting it.
And Alan is curious to know how many events get triggered to your system at a certain time. If you can share that.
Yeah, we do. So at the moment, we're triggering about 25K a month. So it's not huge. It's not nothing. It's sort of, if we exclude weekends, because weekends is basically nothing. We have 1,000 a day. I think the most we have in like a short time period is going to be like if we mass update users. So on the tech side, we can import from a CSV like a list of users, 10, 20, 100,000 users. But that's a specific use case, and we didn't want to like overcharge n8n. So for that specific case, we how can I say, like space out the webhooks. Give them like a half a second each time, just to make sure that we're not overloading, and we're on Heroku, so we don't have to restart the dynos. But yeah, we also so another answer would be the batching I was explaining earlier, and the fact that it's not as simple as one action equals one webhook. We batch them every, I think it's half a second, and so we can have like super long workflow, super long webhooks that are like tens, even hundreds of actions theoretically, but that also helps with the amount of executions.
Wonderful. Max, I think you might be the right person to answer this. So the community wants to know with the user management feature that's going to come out soon, can the users be isolated, and can we prevent the CPU hogging?
Sure. So can users be isolated? Yes. In fact, our MVP, that will be sort of one of the first things that you can do is to meet this sort of requirement of, hey, I want a bunch of people to use n8n and I want to spin up a Docker container for each one. So that will definitely be the case. Something a bit more sophisticated like CPU allocation per user isn't part of that MVP. I would expect that something like that will start coming when we start thinking about features that allow for more complicated setups of n8n. So if we're starting to talk about workspaces or groups, that implies we need that kind of taxonomical or hierarchical structure because we got more people collaborating in an instance. So functionality like that will be something we think about. But love the idea, have not in sort of in the initial MVP, you know, thought about CPU hogging and whatnot, but of course, with a lot of people, depending on the setup, that's something that could happen. So we will have a look at that when we're thinking about these sort of expanding out the scope post MVP. So thanks.
Awesome. I'm going to wait for a couple of minutes to see if we got more questions for our speakers today. In the meantime, thank you everyone for joining in. And thank you for all the speakers for taking out their time and sharing their knowledge with us.
If I may quickly, Harsh, I'm not sorry to cut you off, but Maxim, it would be amazing to see if at some point you update your version of n8n to see how those canvas improvements are going on such a big flow like that. I'd be very curious to see that.
I was actually waiting for the meetup to finish to update our n8n and see what it looks like. I'd be glad to share a screenshot or two.
Fantastic. Cheers.
All right, so thank you everyone for joining in. We got a couple of minutes. So what we are going to do is in the last meetup, I got a really good feedback that people enjoyed the ice-breaking session. So we are going to continue with that. So if you want to be a part of the ice-breaking sessions, connect with the community members and interact with them, stay here. For those who have to hop out, thank you once again for joining in. Do share your feedback with us and let me know if you want to give a talk or if you know someone who might be interested in giving the talk.